Will we move on to a film we've mentioned a couple of times already now then, which is The Last Seduction?
Probably best for a number of reasons.
Yes, you can tell early on that Linda Florentino's Bridget Gregory is not intended to be a sympathetic protagonist, as she runs a telemarketing outfit in New York. Her husband, an apparently very mature medical student, Bill Pullman's Clay Gregory, is a bit of a loser, deep in hawk to a loan shark, but may just be turning things around after stealing a bunch of pharmaceutical cocaine and flogging them to drug dealers for $700,000, which was apparently Bridget's idea. However, Bridget would rather have that cash for herself, so she runs off with it, going into hiding under a new identity, Wendy Croy, out in the sticks near Buffalo until a divorce can be arranged and the money suitably laundered. Clay's not taking it lying down, though, hiring a private detective to track Bridget down. Meanwhile, Bridget has started a relationship of sorts with Peter Berg's Mike Swale, purely sexual on her side, but increasingly more unrequitedly lovey-dovey on Mike's end of things, making him a prime target for Bridget's manipulations as Clay starts closing in on her. The annoying thing about The Last Seduction, well, the primary annoying thing about it, at least, is a waste of potential. I'm entirely on board with a battle of wits, but this is one-sided at best. Even were Mike and Clay's wits to be merged, they'd barely be a half-wit, so watching Bridget outsmart them is akin to outsmarting a small child by stealing their nose with your thumb. It's easy to forget that Peter Berg is sometimes an actor, mainly because his performances are so forgettable, and while that's pretty much the case here, he can take comfort in not being Bill Pullman, who must have been told he's in a comedy, or alternatively downed that supply of pharmaceutical cocaine before selling it. Linda Florentino is not, I think, someone I've formed any fixed opinion about prior to watching this, and I'm not inclined to develop a positive or negative one on the basis of this film, which means she escapes unscathed from a film I'm otherwise scathing about. Perhaps my mistake was taking this seriously, as I think this was pitched primarily as an exploitation skin flick, and any other qualities it may have had were either incidental or accidental. A complete waste of time and effort for all involved. Didn't like it at all. Oh, a correction. After the recounts, the primary annoying thing about Last Seduction was in fact the soundtrack. I regret the error and also watching the film.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one as well, man. I'm sorry. I think of the bunch that we rewatched for this, I probably Last Seduction is perhaps the only one that went up in my estimation, because I remember being sort of crucially disappointed by this early doors, although it'd probably be the poster child for this sort of subgenre that we're discussing tonight. At the time, a big deal was made of it, and certainly something happened with Fiorentino's career off the back of it and her performance here. I can't remember, did she get any award nominations for this? I know there was a lot of talk around the time. There was a lot of buzz around her, and I think tellingly of that era in filmmaking, I think a precedent was set around people's willingness to get their, or women's willingness to get their kit off to fulfill these kind of roles. And besides Men in Black, nothing much happened with Linda Fiorentino after this. But in going back to this now, I found it a lot more enjoyable, and I think a lot of the humour of it probably went over my head when I first watched this back in, it wasn't immediately after it came out, it probably would have been 97, 98, I guess, that I saw it. And I don't think I was quite tuned in enough to the humour then. I certainly was now, and I appreciated that. I think it offered something different to the pack in that respect. And although Fiorentino's character is just like massively amoral, to the point of like almost nihilism, I think there is still some pleasure to be had in watching her obvious manipulation of people, primarily Mike, who is innocent but such a wet blanket that I was quite happy to see all manner of bad things happen to him. I just wanted to slap the guy. He is like a 20-odd-year-old guy who acts like he's only ever had one serious girlfriend before and is so desperate to fall in love with this woman that I just wanted to reach into the screen and throttle him, and just, it is so obvious. And unfortunately, Peter Berg plays it incredibly well, I think, in that respect. And whether that's a function of his limitations as an actor at this point, I don't know. But I really just wanted to reach into the screen and throttle the character. So I was really glad to see him being abused by Linda Fiorentino. That was great. Again, I'm not sure that I'm going to come back to The Last Seduction anytime soon, but I very much more enjoyed my watch of it this time around, and I think there's a good deal to recommend it if you are not familiar with the film or the genre at large, although clearly, Scott, you would disagree. Again, that is all right.
Yeah, Craig, Linda Fiorentino got BAFTA nominated, which is the most significant
Right.
nomination for this. So she did get some kind of awards buzz around her. I really liked this. I really liked it the last time I saw it, which may have just been once.
Are you only saying that because you were worried that after this podcast I was just going to cut all ties, Drew?
You're pronouncing hope very strangely. I mean, sorry, no. I think I must have watched it around about the same time as you, kind of 97, that kind of time. And I remembered really liking it and finding Linda Fiorentino very attractive. But beyond that, not much more stuck in my memory. So I was kind of coming to this fresh. And I really enjoyed it. I certainly hadn't remembered quite how funny it was. And Scott does have a fair point in that there's not much of a battle of wits there at all, because everybody else has come very much unprepared for that battle. But I just found it very entertaining watching her do that. And as much of a sap as Mike is, like, you thinking, okay, maybe is she just manipulating? She's evil. And it's like, oh no, wait, he just got absolutely blind drunk and drove a car. He can die in all the fires. Great, he's absolutely acceptable as a victim now. That's fine. That's even before he agrees to murder for her. So. Yeah, so it's a bit one-sided. I just thought she's great. Really like her voice. And it's kind of... It's a really good femme fatale voice that she's got for, like, when you're doing a noir type of film. I found it really entertaining. I hadn't remembered the humour at all and appreciated that.
If I were Linda Fiorentino's family and friends, I would worry about how well she inhabited this role, because it's the kind of role that really depends on a strong performance. And it's not the kind of role... this kind of profile that there would have been a lot of those going at this time in Hollywood, right? So I think to see her make the most of it is like a thing of joy, and I'm really that character is obviously abhorrent, but it's one of those rare occasions where I'm happy to see an abhorrent character sort of get on and just mess people up, because those people make themselves such willing targets.
That's a character like that. It's like the character being likeable goes a long way. Whereas, for instance, in Romeo's Bleeding, I hated Jack Grimaldi. I didn't want him to do well or anything. Whereas in this film, I really like the character.
Yeah, I think. Do you know one of the reasons I think I like the character so much is that because I think at a certain point you've gathered enough life experience that as a man, I would sit back, and if that character was trying to come on to meet a bar, I would know well enough to be like, get the fuck away from me, man, you're trouble. And I would have nothing to do with that. So there is almost a certain appeal in watching the younger man fall victim to that character, and just that inexperience and naivety be preyed upon. I don't know if it's just it reassures someone of our age that thank goodness we don't have to worry about that kind of thing anymore.
The biggest disappointment I have with this film isn't the film itself, it's more just that I've seen Linda Fiorentino in so little. Saw her in Jade, which was late 90s Dogma and Men in Black, and I don't really think I've seen her in anything else, not that I can recall anyway. Like, she should have been in much more stuff.
On the strength of this, I would agree with you entirely.
Yeah, big disappointment, that.
Again, though, this is what I alluded to before, and it's not the last time I'll allude to it in this podcast, Drew. I do wonder how much of that is down to the studio system. And, right, you've established that you're willing to get your kit off in this film, whether it's in, you would argue sort of contextually in this film, it's probably fine, but you wonder how much expectation there is then on a woman of Linda Fiorentino's, I would suggest, fairly obvious physical appeal, to therefore just strip on a whim and expose herself or not have a career, essentially, regardless of how well you've established yourself in material like this. That's my big fear about quite a few of the female roles that we will discuss in this podcast. Yeah, because a lot of these actresses have put in really good performances in the films that we'll be talking about tonight, and very little, if anything, has been seen of them since. And you would wonder if they gave those performances in similar roles now, that they wouldn't go on to a much more fulfilling career.
Yeah, almost like they've sold something there that really wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Or, I mean, it could be that Linda Fiorentino was an absolutely terrible trash person who was completely disagreeable, and her reputation within the industry preceded her. But, and that's why her career ended up falling flat. But I don't get that impression. That's not my instinct, put it that way.
Yeah, who knows? And I've not looked into that. Whether like, she's got a bad reputation or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, it just seems quite a shame she kind of more or less fell off the radar at the end of the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, because on the basis of this, like yourself, I would have liked to have seen her in a lot more stuff.
Yep.
I mean, even if she was awful, how many awful actors in the male sense of things have been getting away with murder? Not literally, but almost
of them.
for a long time. So, yeah.
Yes.
The answer is all of them, Scott.
Yes.
Aye, Drew's not looking at Dennis Quaid in particular, but...
That's what I was going to mention. Just you mentioned Dennis Quaid, though. I was going to ask you about how you felt about Bill Pullman. I'd forgotten he was in it, and I thought, Craig's not going to be happy revisiting this.
I didn't mind him so much in this, man. I just feel like his performance was pitched at just about the right level. He was almost comic relief in this, and sort of was so willingly accepting of his fate. He wasn't surprised at any of the bad turns. It's almost like, well, I knew this was all going to go to shit the moment I made this decision, so I might as well just have a laugh doing it. I kind of appreciated the very precise level his performance was pitched at, and I don't know if that was by instruction or by Bill Pullman's design, but yeah, I did not find Bill Pullman particularly disagreeable in this, which, yes, a pleasant surprise.
I find that quite interesting because for the first time since you mentioned it, which was back when we were doing Less Than Zero, and you got entirely the wrong film, which is because Bill Pullman wasn't in that in our early episode when you first mentioned this, and I hadn't really, I think I've seen him in much since then, and I certainly had not really thought about him before that point. So I was like, here's an opportunity. It's like, and in this film, I was like, I mean, he's no Dennis Quaid, but I can kind of see where Craig's coming from, because I thought he was incredibly bland.
Really?
I'm just quite curious that in this film you didn't feel that.
It's not that I didn't find him bland. I just think he was kind of comedically bland. Let's say the character with the stakes that he's involved in just seems so apathetic to it all and willingly accepting of it all, and does so with such good humour that I can't help but sort of be engaged with him. It's not that the character wasn't necessarily bland, it's that the blandness kind of suited the comic intent, or what I perceive to have been the sort of comic intent of that role, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah. That's sort of an amusing thing, that this is the first time I really kind of got where you were coming from. Yes, that was all I had to say about that.
I'm worried that I've actually got the wrong end of the stick with Bill Pullman. Maybe we should do a Bill Pullman retrospective, because the more I think about it, and if I look through Bill Pullman's career and the films of his that I've seen, I'm worried that there are more films of his that I've seen where actually his performance was all right than actually bad ones, and I'm not sure I've been entirely fair in my assessment.
Well, thunderous praise. Actually, he's all right.
Yes, I'm sure Bill Pullman will be losing a great deal of sleep over my opinion.